Hello, welcome back to Asian Cinema Season 2, and continuing on with the legend of Bruce Lee, talking about the 5 films collected in this Master Collection box set. His second film with a starring role to show off his talents as an actor and a martial artist, Fist of Fury. So Fist of Fury was released in 1972, a year after his first starring role movie, The Big Boss, directed by Lo Wei, and Fist of Fury was also directed by Lo Wei. Even though Bruce Lee had some disagreements with him while making The Big Boss, and would apparently go on to have more disagreements with in making Fist of Fury, to the point where he did not want to work with Lo Wei moving forward after this second film. Although I will say, I think this is a huge improvement over The Big Boss, and I enjoyed this far more than I did that first film. And again, I say first film, I really do look at his Bruce Lee's filmography as kind of this 5-movie cycle, of which I haven't seen, well, I guess just one left actually. Game of Death is the one I haven't seen. Way of the Dragon, I kind of grew up with a little bit. Enter the Dragon I've seen a couple of times, so at this point I have one movie left as far as that kind of fresh film that I've never seen. Now I did see the beginning of this, and I think I mentioned in the previous video my dad had all the films on VHS, and the one that I think he gave to me, or I lent for an extended period of time, was Way of the Dragon. We'll get to that in the next video. But, you know, I don't know why I never got to those other ones, because he had all of them. But I think I tried to start watching Fist of Fury, because I remember the funeral scene at the beginning quite vividly, actually, that whole opening scene. But I think I just got quite bored of it and didn't kind of continue to watch it. I think that might be why I never watched Fist of Fury in earnest. Now, I want to say to clear up, but I'd imagine anyone watching this who has any kind of knowledge of Bruce Lee will know this already, but I like to cover these things in these videos regardless. From what I understand, the original title of the previous film we talked about, The Big Boss, Bruce Lee's first starring role, was The Big Boss. And in America, it was released as Fists of Fury. And now this film is called Fist of Fury, and so to avoid confusion with Fists of Fury in the US, America released Fist of Fury as the Chinese connection to kind of capitalize on the success of the William Friedkin film, The French Connection, which I believe came out in 1971, perhaps? Early 70s anyway, and obviously had to be before this one for it to even have that connection, no pun intended. But anyway, that's the title thing kind of taken out of the equation, and just I've talked about it now, and I can talk about what I thought of the actual film itself and the title confusion. I mean, there's not much more to say about it. I think it's really ridiculous how they handled it. I don't know where the idea to call it Fists of Fury came from. I don't know if they made The Big Boss and it was released in China, and then America wanted to release it, and at that point they were already making Fist of Fury, and I thought, oh, that's a cooler title, let's call it that. Not thinking about the future, I really don't know. Think about your future. I don't know. Anyway, so Fist of Fury, the 1972 film. This stars Bruce Lee, obviously, as Chen Zhen, I believe. That somehow popped into my head. I don't tend to remember these names, and sometimes the names are quite tricky to even read, never mind pronounce, so I try not to attempt them and just say Bruce Lee. But Chen, I'm pretty sure, was his character's name, and I believe it's based partly on a true story. But obviously in this film there's a lot of embellishment, no doubt, that goes into telling that kind of true story, or taking elements of a story that happened in history and transposing it to this kind of martial arts revenge story. And Chen is a student of a martial arts school. It's always about a martial arts school, it seems. And I'm kind of concurrently watching a lot of Jackie Chan films, and especially in the 70s with these Hong Kong martial arts movies, it always seems to be about a martial arts school, a student of the martial arts school, and then the master of the martial arts school usually getting killed and needs to be avenged. It's a very common theme in these films, and that's just me barely scratching the surface of some of these movies, so I'm sure it must be a huge overarching reused, recycled plot device in a lot of these films. But it certainly, I think, gave this film over The Big Boss, and I can't help but compare the two because they are the first two Bruce Lee movies, but also both directed by Lo Wei. I can't help but compare them, and I think that this one, just the plot has a lot more urgency to it, a lot more I don't know, I just felt more engaged in it. And Bruce Lee, Chen, he is, you know, incensed that his master has been. I mean, there's a whole plot with poisoning, and you know, he discovers certain things, and then there's a rival martial arts school that is actually a Japanese martial arts school. In fact, actually, it was a case of Chen's master dying because he was sick, and then you later learn that there was a poisoning plot, and so the plot literally thickens. And the Japanese martial arts school, they come to Chen's school, and they you know, they ridicule them and say, you know, your master was old and sick. And I think they bring a sign that says the sick man of East Asia, something like that. So, you know, they really, you know, they come in and rub salt into the wound that their master has died. And they're very much like, look, we're not going to retaliate against this Japanese school. We're going to just leave it as it is, and just focus on, you know, mourning our master and all that kind of stuff. But Bruce Lee, Chen, he has other ideas, and he turns up at the Japanese school, and you know, I mean, it's probably the scene of the movie for me is when he turns up and takes out everyone. His presence in that scene is unbelievable. You know, he comes in, he's kind of wearing his, you know, kind of traditional, you know, martial arts clothes. I mean, that's probably a really awful thing to say, but I don't know, just like a, you know, just the kind of the pants and the jacket. You know, he comes in and basically challenges everyone in this Japanese school, and he starts fighting, and eventually he pulls the top off, and you see his ridiculously kind of chiseled physique, and then he really goes to town. And there's an amazing shot that's kind of partially overhead looking down, and he's standing in the center of this circle that's like moving around. Oh, unbelievable shot. Just the dynamic motion of all of the actors on set there just made it for such a cool visual. You know, this kind of this pack swarming around him as he stands there poised. He has such a great again, I know nothing about martial arts, but just his kind of his battle stance. You know, when he's got his arms like that and he's ready, there's this, like, it just feels like there's not an inch of him that isn't out of place. Like, he feels like he's using absolutely, like, down to the atom, every bit of available space to him to properly use his body as a defensive and offensive machine against all of these people. And so he teaches them all a lesson. You know, he makes them literally eat their words at the end of that sequence. But this is when I was like, okay, this is Bruce Lee. This is why he is an icon. This is why he is a legend. As I said with the Big Boss, he had the presence. There was something about him, but the fight scenes were quite underwhelming for me, going into it from the perspective of him being such a legend and an icon of martial arts and cinema. Here I read that he choreographed his fight sequences. I don't know if that helped, but there was certainly, and of course there's the kind of the trademark Bruce Lee kind of, I don't know what you would call them, but when he's fighting and slamming people down, and he's kind of like, it's like this battle cry that he has. It's very animalistic in this, you know, it's wholly unique and his, and that is all over this film. And I don't really think it was in The Big Boss. So I just feel like this film unleashed Bruce Lee in his full power in these fight sequences. And even some of the scenes where he is brooding over his master's death, and he becomes kind of a wanted man, you know, and he becomes someone who is basically going against the law, and he is killing people. You know, there's definitely a dark element of this film, where it isn't just about beating up the people who have wronged him and perhaps have, you know, plotted to kill his master, or even disgrace his name. At the beginning, it's just about the fact they disgrace his name, that he wants to go and, you know, kick their ass. But then it becomes apparent later on that there's more to it, much more to it. And so you really feel his sense of wanting revenge on them at the beginning, and then towards the end when it becomes even more personal, and it seems like they might have actually had a hand in his master's death. And I think some of the scenes, he does some really great acting, just with his face, you know, not even with words, just showing this this primal hatred that he has, and this drive for revenge. And you get the sense that he's almost gone too far, and that it's past the point of no return, basically. And perhaps he's lost a bit of himself in allowing himself to fall into this trap of hate and violence, and retaliation as well. And I feel like I'm almost making the film sound better than it is in that sense, because there are some moments where the acting isn't great, and so on and so forth. There's a few ridiculous moments. There's a bit where he lifts someone up in a rickshaw, where it's just like superhuman strength, and it just kind of doesn't go along with the rest of the tone of the movie, which is very serious. And I don't know whether that came from Lo Wei's kind of leaning into moments like the cartoon cutout in the Big Boss when someone gets thrown through a wall, where he likes to throw in these comedic flourishes. But I really enjoyed this film. Some of the fight scenes towards the end were really, really good. You actually kind of get to see Jackie Chan in this film. He does a stunt in the film when Bruce Lee kicks one of the bad guys through a wall and he flies out into the garden outside. That was apparently Jackie Chan being the stunt double in that shot. So you get these kind of two legends of Hong Kong cinema and martial arts icons kind of crossing paths for the first time. I know he's in Enter the Dragon as well, but I didn't know that, and I didn't even, you can't see it in the movie at all, but from what I've read, that is Jackie Chan himself. And, that's a whole other story, is Jackie kind of struggling with his career in, being positioned as the next Bruce Lee. But regardless, we're here to talk about Bruce Lee, not Jackie Chan, but I thought that was an interesting side note. I really liked the kind of the finale of the film, and, building up to him taking out the kind of the top men of this Japanese school, and the ending was really shocking to me. I didn't see the ending coming at all. As I mentioned, the ending of The Big Boss to me was very dour and downbeat, and just, it felt like, he had, and it's a similar thing actually with Bruce Lee's character in The Big Boss. He enacts his revenge, and it comes at a human cost, obviously to the lives that he has taken in combat, but also to his own self. There is a human cost to his own soul, I suppose, in taking these lives, and at the end it doesn't end well for him. Same thing happens in Fist of Fury, and if you're watching this and you haven't seen it and you would like to, then please go ahead and watch it, because I'll probably spoil the ending in just a second. You've been warned. He basically relents and allows himself to be arrested, because he realizes that he has to face the music. He has to pay for what he's done. The people who he is taking his revenge out on have committed murder and have done wrong, but he has done the same, and he is sunk down to their level. So he agrees to leave with the police at the end of the film, and the doors open, and I believe either Japanese police or Japanese characters are there with guns, and they're all pointed at him. And he just has this Butch Cassidy in the Sundance Kid moment, and he runs out towards them and jumps out with a flying kick, and it freeze frames the end, and you hear the gunshots go off. I believe, anyway. I watched it a few days ago. Maybe you don't hear gunshots, but it's certainly implied that he goes out in this... Is it a blaze of glory? Is it a blaze of stupidity? I don't know, but I was like, oh wow. I was really surprised by that ending, and I think even though that is a very dour and downbeat ending, I think it's a lot better than The Big Boss, because it's more visually dynamic. Like, he's literally jumping towards the camera when it happens. In The Big Boss, it's like a wide shot, and he's slowly walking away, I believe. So there's a bit more immediacy to it. There's a bit more engagement to it as that kind of and obviously him running out to his death in that sense. It's almost an act of defiance. And I believe, I read, again, I don't know how reliable these bits of trivia on IMDb are, but I did read that it was his idea for the character to go out and to basically pay for what he'd done, but to do it in an honourable way. And I don't know how honourable it is to run out and jump into gunfire, but he certainly feels a sense of being wronged by these people, and runs out. And there is apparently another reason he didn't want to work with Lo Wei again was because of some of the racial elements of the film, obviously the Chinese and the Japanese. But yeah, I thought it was a really good film. There's actually a moment where he is fighting some of the men who he believes might have had a hand in his master's death actively, and he kills them with a punch. This is like the Fist of Fury, I guess you could call it. And it's this punch, and he punches in, and then it's slow motion. And it's just the aftermath, and his fist is like vibrating, and he's like got this look on his face, and it goes on for like, it feels like 20 seconds, and it's like, it really dances over the line of being over the top and cartoony, but also just like really, I don't know, I won't say the word visceral. I don't know. There's something really powerful about it, and I feel like it's kind of really shaky as to whether you can take it as a joke or as something that really works in a serious level for the story. But I thought it was really good, and yeah, so I actually really like this film. I would definitely watch it again. The Big Boss is one I just don't feel I would gravitate towards again. The nunchucks. I mean, the nunchucks are kind of another piece of the iconography of Bruce Lee, and he uses them in this film in the fight scene at the Japanese school, which I still think is the best fight scene of the film. Really, I mean, just I don't know. There's a power to his fighting that is different to anyone else that I've seen, and just a precision and a fire, you know, and a charisma to it as well. I mean, yeah, you can see that it's pre-planned, choreographed stuff, but like just the way there's a flourish and a flair to the way he did it that is just really unique and his own. And the nunchucks, you know, when he's swinging them around, I mean, it's awesome. It really is cool to watch. So overall, a film I could probably dive deeper into and talk about more with like the behind the scenes stuff if I wanted to, but just on a pure kind of first viewing level, I thought it was a really good film, and I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm really glad that I finally have seen that one. And I feel that way about, you know, getting through this box set and these films, and getting to say that I've seen all of his movies, all of his main kind of starring role movies. But, you know, The Big Boss was definitely a disappointing start. This to me was like, this is Bruce Lee. And of course I've seen him in Enter the Dragon, Way of the Dragon. I've seen how great he is. But I was expecting more from The Big Boss, and was hoping this one would be a little bit more on that level of really showing what he can do. And I think it really does. So I was really happy with this one. Please let me know your thoughts on the film down below if you have seen it. And I'll see you in the next video, which I believe is the next film he did, The Way of the Dragon. Is it The Way of the Dragon or Way of the Dragon? I can have a look on the box set. The Way of the Dragon, apparently, yes. So that'll be the next video and the next film I talk about. And I'm really intrigued to see this one, because this is the one that I've probably seen more than any other Bruce Lee movie, the one I kind of grew up with. And I'm just really intrigued to see how it matches up to my memories of it. The Chuck Norris fight in the Coliseum, and you know, a lot of the stuff in the film that just it almost feels like, I don't know, there's, again, I'll talk about in the Way of the Dragon video, but there's something kind of special about it, purely based on the fact that I grew up with it. So I'm intrigued to dive into it and see how I react, you know, 20 plus years later. So, and it has definitely been at least 15, 16 years since I saw The Way of the Dragon. So anyway, thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans and calling into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you.